And next this evening, we have the Executive Director from the Massachusetts Association of School Committees, Mr. Glenn Koocher. Dorothy Presser was unable to join us this evening, but I have a sense that Mr. Koocher will just handle himself fine. Thank you very much for being here, Mr. Koocher. We've invited you here this evening. As you know, we have an acting superintendent situation. For the public's benefit, the Southbridge School Committee belongs to the Massachusetts Association of School Committees. We pay dues to belong to the Massachusetts Association of School Committees. They offer many services to school districts to help support them. We've participated in the district governance project. Ms. Presser's been very helpful in that. And the Massachusetts Association of School Committees also conducts or helps district conduct superintendent searches, and that's why we've asked you to be here this evening to discuss what you offer and probably to advise this group on how to move forward. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I did provide for the members a copy of something called a vacancy in the superintendency, which is something that helps guide school committees through the process of assessing what they need to do and looking at some of the steps that are involved in seeking a permanent superintendency. I'd be happy to respond to any questions regarding that, but I would tell you that in doing this, you want to think about things like timelines, perceptions, issues, and what's in the best interest of the district. And the first thing that we ask a district to think about is, why is there a vacancy? And as you well know, the history of the superintendency of the last 3 years has been rather turbulent. That's going to scare people away. This district has a rough history with the superintendency of recent note. You have the Department of Education having you in level 4 status, looking over your shoulders. In some of our communities, I hate to be as sarcastic and cynical as I can be about the department, but my sense is that they are drooling over the possibilities of putting districts into receivership and taking them over. And you don't want to be in a position where the department decides to consider receivership, as they are considering for Holyoke, as they've done in Lawrence, as they may do in other districts. As your superintendent explained, there are a lot of reasons that districts are in level 4, and many of them have nothing to do with the good work of the faculty. Many of those status outcomes have a lot to do with high-risk student populations, economics, what the business climate has done to certain communities, and you're going to need to work your way out of that. Candidates for the superintendency at this part of the year are few and far between, because most of the searches are concluded, and the ones that are getting started to be put in place next year, hoping to have someone in the position by June. So I would certainly suggest that you not seriously consider immediately kicking off a superintendent search at a time, as I said, when there are not many candidates and when not many people are paying attention to the numbers of vacancies that are out at this time of the year. I just returned from the meeting of the National Alliance of Superintendent Searchers, where we are the Massachusetts representatives. This is a consistent theme around the country, but it's more pronounced in Massachusetts. As you may have figured out, the regulatory climate for schools in Massachusetts is as rancid as it can be anywhere in the country. And that's in a state with the highest performing students in the country and often the world. The regulatory climate is just so rancid and so hostile that a lot of people don't want to do this work. Fortunately, there are a lot of people native to Massachusetts and a lot of people familiar with the Northeast who are used to working in a hostile regulatory climate, joining their friends in the healthcare field and most other businesses that are regulated heavily because it's in the nature of the state to do that. But no one is as heavily regulated and as hostily regulated as public schools. People are reluctant to do it, and they're reluctant to do it especially in districts that may be vulnerable to action by the state. And my recommendation to you would be to think very carefully about when you would be starting a search, if you were going to start one, whether you would consider seriously a year or two delay in order to provide administrative stability to your district. You do have an interim superintendency. The interim superintendency is doing well to begin to stabilize the situation in the district. I think the interim superintendency will help keep the wolves at bay and allow you to take control of your own destiny. That said, when you are ready to pursue the search process, there are a lot of options available to you. For our member districts, we provide extensive services without cost if the district wanted to play a larger role in managing its own process. We find that most of the people who want to be superintendents find the districts by going to the websites of the state school committees or school boards and superintendents. Just about everybody who was named as a finalist in any Massachusetts search came to that search by looking at the websites and seeing that what's open in Massachusetts are the following communities. There are people in Massachusetts who have ambitions to fill the superintendency. There are some people outside of Massachusetts who are eager to return home, or where the other adults in the household are eager to return or come back to the east. People who are not daunted by snow, people who are not daunted by cold. There's a stunning number of people are terrified of snow. You just have to get out of the Northeast in order to understand that. Such sympathy extended to us from everybody else in the country, and we're just, yeah, we had 9 feet of snow, but we shoveled it and we got by, and now it's gone and we'll move on. They are afraid of coming into the regulatory climate because in Massachusetts, even schools that do well are often technically in failure because of the way the regulatory system is set up. Frankly, I think Southbridge would probably be a decently performing school district in most other states. But you've got a level 4 status because of the way the system is set up, and because of your because of the demographic challenges that you struggle to serve as you try to serve all children in your district and serve them well. And I think the faculty deserves a lot of credit for fighting every day, and the administrators for fighting every day for the kids in Southbridge, as does the school committee as you try to do that. So as I say, there are extensive services that we can provide without fee to you if you want to manage your own search. We do search consulting services for a fee, as do many others. I've given you information about who all those people are nationally, and you could come and talk to them, and I'm sure they'd all like to take your money. And I'm sure they'd all like to sell you their recruiting lists and help you find a superintendent. So, I mean, that's a general overview, but I did want to preface my remarks by saying to you that this district needs to have the perception of stability and the continued progress of turnaround that would bring you a good flock of candidates. And that is not to suggest for a moment that there isn't, or that there aren't able, qualified, and very good candidates here, nearby. We pass no aspersions on the wonderful people who do interim superintendent work and help the districts turn around and do so quite successfully. But only you know what's best for Southbridge and what the best options may be. And as I said before, if you have some measure of stability in your interim situation, my recommendation to you is not to move too quickly, but to allow a sense of stability to be acquired.
Thank you for that. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Koocher? Mrs. Donovan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Mr. Koocher, thank you for coming. I guess just a general question. You talked about, or based on what you said, as far as the timing now really isn't good because a lot of the searches have closed and there's not a great pool out there. In your opinion, what is the ideal timeline of searches to begin and end so that we fall in that window?
This year, the absolute top cream of the crop of candidates were all selected at or around Thanksgiving time to January 1st.
And these selected candidates will begin their new jobs in the fall of 2015? Oh, in July, okay.
So they'll
Okay.
take their positions in 3 months. People got their searches going.
So they were selected at that time between
They were
November and January. So
selected
therefore,
and-
the search, you have to back up from that,
So
obviously.
they started their searches in September and October, moved quickly, but with enough time to engage the community. They were all able to have community focus groups or community surveys that allowed people to have input into the process. It was time to organize search committees so that they could do the initial screening and interviews in the appropriate confidential setting that helps you do that. And they moved forward.
Okay, thank you. Second question I had was relative to MASC services. You said you provide services for fees and some things not for fees. Can you give us an estimate of if you were to do it soup to nuts, what we would be looking at for a cost if we were to partake in that?
The cost would be if you add, depends on whether you advertise, and depends on whether you print or move exclusively on an online basis. But with advertising and print material and mailing, probably you're looking at a maximum of $12,000 at the bottom end and $30,000 to $40,000 at the higher end, depending upon what you use. But our search consulting fee is $9,500. It is the lowest, but it's low because it's subsidized by the membership and by their dues.
Okay.
So you've been paying dues to our association for almost 70 years. It's not like you're getting a bargain basement service. It's that you're getting something that every year you sort of pay a little bit towards so you can use it if you need it.
Okay, so is it up to the school committee to determine whether or not they want to advertise locally versus going nationally?
All of the key decisions in a search should be made by the school committee or its designee. So, for example, some districts create an online brochure, which can be sent out everywhere for nothing. Some wish to have it mailed to other districts. Some wish to advertise in media that people seeking the superintendency will often read. Education Week, for example, is a publication that people read. Usually there's something in the immediate local media because members of your community need to know that you're looking, and they need to have some sense of confidence in the process. Not everyone advertises, but pretty much everybody develops online promotional material. And as I said, we do that without charge to any member district that wants to use that service. Online posting on the websites of the school committee and superintendents associations is routine. We do that for all of our districts, just upon request, and that's there's no charge for that service. The most of the fees that are earned go to the outreach to candidates, the organization of the search committee, the presence during the interviews, and being here for all different phases of the search process, not because you need to be watched, but because school committees like to have somebody around all the time who's able to help them do that. If we're doing a technical assistance service for you, we're often at the other end of the phone rather than on site.
Okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Koocher.
Thank you. Is there anybody else with questions? Mr. Koocher?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
in hearing what Mr. Koocher said, I would ask you to recall how many search search firms that you contacted, and what those responses have been, because I think he talks about the difficulty of this area and this time. So what were those? Not specifically which companies, but
Yep.
I think there were 5.
I contacted 5. 2 declined to submit a proposal. 1 never responded. MASC was among the first to jump in and say they would help us out. And we do have 1 other company that is interested. And I'll speak to
Possibly
that later,
interested.
possibly, yes.
So it's not exactly wide open there.
Right.
Thank you.
I do think we live in a difficult community. When I went to the Mass Association of School Committees meetings in November, I had an opportunity to speak with many superintendents, and when I told them where I was from, they said, "Oh, you're a superintendent killer." That may not be accurate. That's the perception that's out there in the community, given the, recent happenings in the district. I think we have to be honest with that. I'm not saying anything that people aren't aware of. And I think the state has also been honest about creating a stable situation here in the district. But we had initially received a lot of kind of pressure from the public, who is clamoring for us to do a search and get this process going. And I understand that to a degree, but I also personally disagree that, you need to do this in a thoughtful, calm, rational way, as opposed to being reactionary. So I appreciate those comments that you made. Yeah.
Just one more thing. There is a history, as you say, of some people in town wanting to substitute their wisdom in terms of a search and that sort of thing. But we have someone here who has done this, who does this. And we can either accept the expertise of a person who does it, or the impression of those people who think it would be a neat thing to do. So I think that's important to show. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Quinney?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Mr. Koocher. Thank you again for coming. A question that I would pose to you is, could you speak to how effectively MASC has conducted searches, gotten people in place, and then how have those people lasted? Has there been a consistent, stable leadership after it's been established, historically?
We've been pretty fortunate placing people who have been successful. When the searches actually are completed, in the last 3 years, I've had to do 3 of them over because they were unable to find candidates that were acceptable. And that happens if you cast the net and you don't capture people that you want, you should not accept whatever's left over. So we've restarted 3 of them successfully. I mean, I did personally. Most of our superintendents have stayed and have been successful. Most of the superintendents who leave because they're retiring. I mean, it's something else you want to be mindful of. I don't think you want to be doing this again in 3 years or 4 years. I think you'd like someone who would make a commitment to this district and would stay for a significant period of time. And as you're doing that, you want to scrutinize your candidates very carefully to make sure that they're not just looking for a superintendency, but they're looking for your superintendency. And that's where a lot of districts make a mistake. Sometimes people will try to settle for the warm body that's left standing, and they invariably end up paying for it. We discourage them from doing that.
Thank you. And to build on that, speaking to our superintendency and your knowledge and history of the perception that is out there regarding Southbridge, what would you say are things that you would advise us as a committee we should be looking for in our superintendency? Clearly, we know the district best.
I think you want to look for a superintendent who has some measure of success in achieving growth in student achievement. In other words, get someone or find someone or uncover, identify someone who actually understands what has to happen in schools and what kind of leadership is required in order to generate success. Now, you may well be on the road at this time to achieving that success. So this would not be a time to disrupt that progress. There are a lot of districts, by the way, that do short-term contracts with superintendents and sort of audition them, or do extensive searches internally or in the nearby markets and just see what they can find as well. I wouldn't discourage you from just taking plenty of time to see whether you're not able to at least continue. I mean, from the presentation that I was seeing here, it's very clear that you have a handle on the challenges that you confront. What you need to do now is to deploy an action strategy that will help you to make that movement forward. Now, you may have the capacity to do that right now. You may, at some point, look for someone who has successfully turned a district around, but I would warn you, there's a lot more than just numbers. There are people out there who specialize in taking students who are 218 on the MCAS and pushing them up to 221 and declaring victory, or taking students who are 238 and 239 and pushing them over the threshold to make the numbers look good, or putting pressure on the high school faculties to improve your graduation rates, or doing things that you need to do to create the appearance of higher attendance. And they all declare victory, and some of them are getting a lot of publicity in Massachusetts at this time. But if you look deeply at the story behind the story, you'll see that that success may be built on a sheet of ice that's very thin. And you need to look very, very, very carefully at the people who will maybe claim that they're good at turning districts around. But you certainly want to do that. You want to look for people who are extremely good communicators. People who are good communicators rarely fail as superintendents. People who will get out into the community, know the community, and mobilize the community. People who understand the financial end as well as the academic end. There's nothing that used to make me wince as a former school committee member more than watching, at one time, we had a superintendent who couldn't count money but didn't let that stop him from making the presentations to the city council, and it was painful. Because, I mean, with all due respect, it's arithmetic. It's not trigonometry. It's addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. And, you know, some projections. You ought to be able to communicate that. And then there are personal qualities that people look for. Integrity, propensity to tell the truth all the time, willingness to work very hard, and willingness to demonstrate a great respect for your community. And we've had districts that have been in real trouble, that have turned themselves around fairly effectively. And sometimes it's the school committee and the superintendent working together. Sometimes the voters help you out. You get some new people who are skillful and able to help you grow and move past some of your previous history. And then every once in a while the voters trip you up too. So you've got to be very careful about. The members of the community need to be very well alerted by the school committee to what they're doing and how effectively they're doing it, and how they need to think about whatever leadership they select locally. And the last thing in the world you want is the Commissioner of Education deciding whether or not your school committee should be constituted as it is, whether your district should be operating as it is, whether your local government should be changed involuntarily. And trust me, if there's an agency of state government that so regularly dreams about exceeding its authority, it is that one. See, I don't get any money from them. I don't have to worry about what I say.
Just in my last question would be, how would you describe Southbridge as a community and a school district to a potential superintendency candidate?
Well, if we were representing the district looking for a superintendent, we would say that this is a district that is in the process of turning itself around and has righted the ship and is attempting to move in the right direction. This is a district with a faculty that has demonstrated care, where the school committee is proficient and has experienced the district governance training and wants to do the right thing, and that this is a great opportunity to lead a district to success.
Thank you.
And that, by the way, is and we'd be telling them the truth. But the fact is that if someone has a choice of applying to a district that is not looking at well, everyone, no one's got great finances except maybe Cambridge because of the tax base, but or some of the wealthy communities out around 128, 495. But if you were to look at other communities that have been through this, as the wizard said, they don't have anything that you don't have, but maybe they had some better luck, maybe they had an opportunity and that you're now given at this moment, and that you would be ready to move ahead. But I just tell you, I would take my time and see where I was going. I would also tell you that the law gives the school committee very broad discretion about what it may do. I say this with some measure of levity, but also truth. You've called a school committee meeting tonight to talk about the superintendency. You could make me the superintendent tonight if you wanted to. That's the authority that you have.
Congratulations.
Talk about political malpractice. No, but I mean, you have that discretion. So many school committees, just the key is to proceed with confidence, but proceed in public and let the public see what you're doing. And our experience is that when the school committee is straight with the community trusts the school committee and values its judgment. So if you elected to postpone, if you elected to reassess 6 months from now or 5 months from now, if you elected to, if you decided that we're doing very well at this point, let's just keep this, let's try this for another year or two and see if it's working. If you do it in public, the public will follow your lead.
Thank you.
Mr. Olivo just wanted an opportunity to speak.
Through you, Madam Chair, to Mr. Koocher, thank you for being here. I did just have one question. You made mention with a ballpark figure of $12,000 to $40,000 is what it takes to do a search through you guys.
No, that's with a consultant. With us, it would never be more than $12,000.
Okay. Did you give us an amount of what it would be roughly with you? or with MASC?
What it would be with,
The amount to use you guys for a superintendent search?
well, a fee is $9,500.
Okay.
If you use fee-based services. And then on top of the $9,500, there would be advertising, printing, postage, if you elected to use that.
Okay, now you also made mention that you had to reopen 3 searches.
Those are
With that,
free.
is that $9,500 or?
No, that fee doesn't recur.
Okay.
That fee is not paid until you have a superintendent with a signed contract. And if you don't like the field, and if you throw it out and start over again, that's all covered by the same, and by the way, anybody would do that,
Okay,
except some of the fees are higher.
all right. Thank you, that's all I have, Madam Chair.
Mrs. Condon?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, to Mr. Koocher. Just a general question. I'm looking at the initial paperwork that you had given us from February 23rd, 2015. For general consultation during that initial visit, is there a fee for that? During the initial
General
visit?
consultation for an initial bit like this?
A
No.
vision of the school committee as the assessment of the
That's
search
part of the
involvement?
process. That's part of the entire process. But if you were doing it with technical assistance, there would be no fee for that. In other words, if the district wanted to handle some of the administrative responsibility, I usually get dirty looks from the school board secretary when I say this, because a lot of those responsibilities often devolve to the school board secretary. But if you were to run the search yourselves with the resources that you had in the department, we could provide some of those services without cost.
And the only reason I ask that question is that assessment portion is, as a school committee, I don't think we've actually sat and talked about that, to come up with all of that, like our vision for the candidate, or just to kind of have those initial discussions to find out, what kind of longevity or process that we're looking at.
There are some things you can do initially to get a sense of where the community is coming from. For example, just as a member service without fee, we could create a community survey for you that people could respond to online, and we can aggregate that data and analyze it for you, and you can ask your community stakeholders any questions you'd like, including prioritizing their key outcomes, telling you what they'd like to see. We often do this with open response capacity, so people can spend some time articulating what it is they want you to know. If that's something that you wanted to do just to get the sense of where the community is, we would do that for any district that's in this position, and there would be no conditions on that. We can put the survey up. We can design it in collaboration with you. You can design it, tell us what you want to do, and see what the responses are.
Thank you. And that was my question, because I feel that right now, there's really no starting point. Like, this is the starting point for us to even kind of evaluate where we stand in regards to that, to finding the next superintendent or evaluating that at this point.
It might be a very good step to try to do a community assessment survey and see what the members of the community would like, and sort of segregate that data by faculty, business leaders, parents, students. Students are very, very, very effective survey responders because they know what they like, they know what they respect, and they know the difference. And they often bring fewer prejudices to the survey table than a lot of others do. It's why we recommend the presence sometimes of a student on the search committee, and we always recommend sitting down and talking to the students to get a sense of how they read the district and how they read the community.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, and I would recommend that maybe we might be able to do that in conjunction with MASC.
We can talk about that when we get to the superintendent search portion. Dr. Page, do you have anything? Mr. Abrahamson?
Just one final question. You've done searches for a number of years, and as social media has advanced, we live in a toxic time. so that you might have candidates who will Google Southbridge Public Schools. And some of the fiercest criticisms come from our own people. How has that affected, and often anonymously, that sort of thing? How has that affected certain searches that you...
Google has made my life 5 times more difficult in doing superintendent searches, and I'll tell you why. I'm just theorizing that, have you been a principal? Okay. Chances are, if you've been a principal, you've suspended somebody from school, or expelled somebody from school, or counseled a teacher out of the profession, or given somebody a less than delightful evaluation. And chances are, those people are Googling you once a week to find out where you are, so they can make sure that any school committee that's considering you will know what an evil person you are. Now, in the meantime, we have people who become the centers of controversy, and you understand, because you're all public figures here, and the superintendent is a public figure, people can say essentially anything they want about you. And it can get printed on social media, get printed in the newspaper. Doesn't even have to be true in order to be protected free speech. So I might be doing reference checking on anybody and pull up your name, and there's going to be letters to the editor about some exaggerated allegation. My favorite case is they're the parents of the child who put a bottle of mouthwash in his pocket, and apparently between classes somebody took the bottle of mouthwash out and slipped a pint-sized hip bottle of vodka into his pocket. And between classes he went to gargle and didn't realize that it was with vodka, and that's why he was intoxicated during English class. In a school that had 0 tolerance for the presence of alcohol in school. And for that young hockey player whose season ended early in his senior year, those parents were very unforgiving to the principal who didn't believe the alibi, who didn't believe the story. We have people who have done very courageous things with regard to discipline, with regard to 0 tolerance, with regard to taking positions on controversial subjects, and find themselves getting beaten up in the local media or on social media. And all that stuff is out there. And when you do a search, when the factions take sides, again, the timeless struggle between the internal candidates and the external candidates, or the concern that sometimes members of the Teachers Association want to make sure that the next superintendent is union-friendly. So you'll find them Googling the collective bargaining history of the previous district and find out that indifferent teacher-hating superintendent went to the bargaining team to support the school committee's position, not to give them a decent wage. And that rhetoric gets thrown out in the middle of a search. Again, I'm sort of drifting around here, but in summary, Google makes it very, very hard. And it's out there and it's forever. So we do a lot of training of search committees about being careful what you do. We advise school committees to sort of be cautious about the comments that you may make in public. You know, someone might say, I like candidate A, candidate B, Mr. Johnson, wasn't really strong in financing, and I was looking for somebody who's strong in financing. Candidate C, and the next thing you know, for the rest of his life, candidate Johnson is labeled as not strong in financing. Right. Because I confused Johnson with Smith, ruined his career. This stuff happens. And I say when the factions line up, people get hurt. And unfortunately, there's no way around it except to provide some measure of confidentiality for the initial round of candidates before they become finalists and expose themselves to not only to Google, but to the help of all those people who want to help you with your search, whether you like it or not.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Donovan?
Thank you. One more question that just popped up. Madam Chair, through you to Mr. Koocher. How would you recommend to a school committee to do a search in good faith with the notion of there could be that political machine working behind the scenes? You could have a search committee with members who are in it for the right reasons and looking for that ideal candidate, and however, when they come forward before the school committee with X number of candidates, if the school committee itself is politically motivated one way or another, that search could be for naught. And I don't know how would that potential, how could that potentially be avoided, if at all?
It can be problematic, so we try to have full and frank conversations with the school committee. But remember this, nobody in the United States of America who wants to be a superintendent is more than 2 degrees of separation away from Southbridge, Massachusetts. In other words, the superintendent in East Mayonnaise, Wyoming, who wants to be, Wyomingites, but who wants to be a superintendent and wants to come east because maybe the spouse is from central Massachusetts, is going to call the head of the Superintendent's Association in Wyoming and say, call Tom Scott, the Superintendent Association head in Massachusetts, or call Glenn, or call somebody that you know, and here's what we want to know about the community. Why is the superintendency vacant? Why did the last one leave? What are the finances like? What's the school committee, what's the school board like? And how is the community and the relationship with municipal government? And is there an internal candidate? Because if there's an internal candidate, people will be intimidated as well. There's just no way around that. And somebody is going to be thoroughly knowledgeable about what's happening, and 2 or 3 sources will tell them what's happening. So if there is a political undercurrent, that will often surface, and it can be damaging to a search. So you need to deal with that internally amongst yourselves. Now, there's always the possibility that people of good faith will favor an internal candidate versus an external candidate. And that happens, especially if you get people who have been in a district a long time and want to be the superintendency of the district. People understand that. But then sometimes there are issues that are undercurrents in districts that are harder to emerge, but they do emerge and they do become known to the candidates. There's no way to hide it. So you have to rely on the good faith of the school committee and the search committee. Search committee is actually as important as the school committee, because that's where stuff is done in confidence. And oftentimes the best candidates don't make it out of the search committee because certain factions inside the search committee don't want those people to move forward. And that's why we always tell school committees, when you're getting the search committee prepared, what you don't want on a search committee are insecure administrators and angry teachers. Because the insecure administrators will try to stop anybody who poses a threat to them. And the teachers are going to want somebody who's union-friendly or favorably disposed to teachers. And sometimes a strategy that we have encountered is that they do from time to time attempt to bully the other members of the search committee with theatrical indignance, emotional pressure.
Okay, thank you very much.
Probably more than you asked for, I'm sorry.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Koocher? On this side or this side? I don't see any. Thank you very much.
So let us know whatever you want to do moving forward, any assistance that you may require, any initial steps, preliminary steps that you want to continue to take. And as I say, we value your membership more than we want your money for a superintendent search. So what we want is for the district to be successful and happy moving forward. My first visit to Southbridge was 14 years ago. Not that I want to be here 14 years from now, but we're very grateful to Southbridge for their support for us, and we'd like to be supportive of you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming out this evening.